This video here is going to be for people who will potentially use ZBrush in a production. If you're not using ZBrush for production, the method of extracting a displacement map, which we've shown in another video, is perfectly valid. But that said, if you're in a production, you need to know what we're going through in this video here. In the displacement video, I said there is a video dedicated to the morphTargetSwitch, found under export options, see this, and morphTarget, this one. And this is the video. This switch here is extremely important in a production because if we're going to Modo now, so here we have, let's say this is a project. This model here has been, this is like, let's say this is a full-on character. I'm just showing this because this is easy to understand. This is character, it's been, the topology is done, topology is locked, blend shapes have been pumped out, you have texturing on it, you have groom and everything, which means there is no way in hell that you're getting anything from ZBrush back into Maya, Modo, or whatever application you're using as a base mesh, meaning this mesh here goes into ZBrush, but it doesn't go out again. So remember what we did in the last video? We took the mesh, we exported the low-res mesh from ZBrush to Modo. In a production, this is not happening. This stays in Modo or Maya or whatnot, and it doesn't leave again. This is a one-way street. Because it would just be so painful. Like, let's say you were doing like this kind of change here to it in ZBrush, and suddenly the groom was supposed to be here. The groom has to update the model. Everything is changing down the pipe. It's extremely painful. So the way we do this is in a slightly different manner than before. So we don't actually export out the model from ZBrush. Instead, we use this model here to calculate the displacement. Essentially, we're doing, let's see, Photoshop. We're doing this. We have this released model in ZBrush, also a released model from Modo or Maya. I use Maya as an example because that's where I'm sitting in my day-to-day job. So I'm just familiar with that from a pipeline point of view. But we have this model here and this is released out. Then we take it into ZBrush and we sculpt the crap out of it. It's just been like really manhandled and mangled and everything. So it has this shape here. But we can't take this out of ZBrush. As I said, been very clear on this. This is not going back into ZBrush ever again. What we need to do is we need to use the release model as a basis for this. So what we're doing is, let's see here, zoom in once. So essentially what we're doing is we're calculating the differences between these two. And that's what we get out as a map. Which is very simple when it comes to the theory of it. And in practice, it works really well as well. So this is the map we're getting. We're getting the differences between Mr. Green map or green mesh and Mr. Black mesh. I just want to be absolutely clear on this, that this is how important this is and how it works. Because if you screw this up in a production, the displacement map is not going to match the character. In some cases, that might be perfectly fine. But if you're working on really high poly assets and the studio and the workplace, they simply just expect it to look exactly the same way in ZBrush as it does in Maya. There can be no discrepancies here. So the way we do this is, let's take this here from Modo to ZBrush. I'm just going to right-click on this and export selected. And we're going to put it the same place as before, as geometry, ZBrush base obj, and I've just made one now called morphTargetSwitch. And I'm going to call this release model. And this is one of the reasons I've been so adamant that you store the OBJ files, because you need this for later on. If you don't have the OBJ file, you might be in really big trouble. So in ZBrush again, just select the star and duplicate the star, and then we import it into this, which is tool and import on my little button here. And then we go to morphTargetSwitch. See here, geometry, ZBrush base obj, morphTargetSwitch, and released. So far it's fine. We just have to make sure that we remember the path, which is also why I'm so adamant about keeping the structure logical. Because now if I go back to the project in 6 months, I will always know where this is. So now we can just sculpt to our heart's content after we create a layer. Just hide this guy. So just subdivide the model a couple of times. Just so we have something to sculpt with. Make a new layer. Now we can just sculpt and happy times. Just create some random details here. Alright, so this is now representative of a character. It has some big shape changes, and it has some smaller high frequency details here. So the way we did it before is we went to the lowest level and we exported this out. Then we made a displacement map from this, which is fine. It's perfectly fine in a personal project, or if the model hasn't been rigged yet. I do this a lot in production as well. So if the model if I'm controlling all aspect of the model, I'll just export this out here and I'll just export out the displacement map we did before. But if the model has been released and put to the next stage, I can't do this. Because again, big difference in shape. So if we want to export this out, we have to again look at the differences between these two. And the way we do this is we go down to the lowest level. We store morph target. Again, you see how many times I use the morph target button? Just put it in the interface somewhere or to a hotkey. Store morph target. Then we import the mesh we had before. Make sure this is the same one because the path there might have changed. So geometry, ZBrush, base obj, and morphTargetSwitch. And there we go. So now it's going to calculate the displacement map, the difference between this one and the released model, which is this guy here. So it's going to simply just calculate the difference here. And this is when the switch morph targets needs to be enabled. All the other settings you can just leave exactly the way they were, but this needs to be enabled at this point here. If this is not on, it's just going to generate the difference between this one and a higher level, but we need to do the difference between this shape here and this shape here. So if we do that, and if we extract the displacement map with switch MT on, we're going to get a displacement map, which you can just put on this character here, this lovely spherical character, and the displacement map is going to work. So I just wanted that to be absolutely clear. And as I said, if you're not in a production, if you're not in a pipeline environment, this is not a concern of yours. Don't do this if you're doing personal project. It has absolutely no benefits if you're not in a production. But if you're in a production, it's essential. So I hope that's clear. And I've written down the instructions on how to do this in a WordPad document, which is shipping along with this tutorial as well. Because the steps can be a bit confusing. What's the order, the selection order, importing, all that. So you just have a little help document there, which will help you with this.